What's going on, Spitfires? Welcome back to another episode of the Spitfire Podcast. I am your host, Lauren Lemunyon, the Spitfire Coach. We are on episode 102, and I am excited to share this one with you. It is fresh off of a coaching session that opened a lot of doors in connecting ideas, in weaving thought patterns together. And I'm saying this specifically for the person who brought it up because he despises when I weave them together in the best way possible. But today I want to talk about labels and the labels that we're giving to other people in our lives, the labels that we are living in, the labels that we're self-assigning to ourselves, and what they're actually doing to us. Sometimes when we have a fresh perspective on things, it allows us to go in a little deeper in the layers of things that we may inadvertently be doing that are draining us of our energy, of our power, of our vision that we want for our lives. So labels are a good thing for, let's say, our office. We need to know where files go. We need to know where we put our pencils, where I put our paper clips, where those important documents are. And they're great for our brain to be able to look at simple processes. So when we know what different patterns are there, when we know how to group things and categorize things, labels are really effective for recall so that we're not taking up a lot of brain space in order to remember how things go or how processes work. So let's imagine that our brain is doing that. Our brain is really good at simple functions. You go here, then you go there, then you go there. It can remember those patterns and those processes. But what happens is when we try to oversimplify things, i.e. people or situations, we can lose a lot of context. We can lose a lot of perspective. We can lose a lot of fine details that allow us to see more than just one word or a binary decision. This is where people get lumped into this person is good, this person is bad. This situation is good, this situation is bad. And the further away we are from it, the more we generalize. And so this came up today during a coaching session, and I listened very carefully, and this topic has come up before because this happens in corporate America all the time. I'm sure all of you at one point or another have taken an assessment. You've taken a personality assessment, a leadership assessment, a strength assessment, and you will get a report at the end of whatever indicator you're taking. And this is not a slight on all of these assessments, but I want you to be very careful when you're taking it and also when you get the results. So I'm certified in Myers-Briggs. I'm also certified in the Energy Leadership Indicator, which is an attitudinal assessment. And the purpose of assessments is to give you a better view of yourself. It's for self-awareness. But here's what happens. When other people are able to see different comparisons, they are qualifying what's good and bad. They're seeing things as helping them to advance things along or holding them back. And when we do that, we're not actually seeking to understand, but it becomes that I'm better than you or you're worse off than me or vice versa. So in this particular situation, the personalities were classified as colors. And so what was happening is in the company, they were labeling people as colors. Now imagine that. You have a certain perspective based on your color profile. If you think about that, that's really not a good thing. You know why? Because a label boxes you into an expectation. You are this way, therefore you will act and react this way, and this is what the outcome is going to be. And while the majority of the time that may be true, what it doesn't do is allow you to change. It doesn't allow you to be anything but what people expect of you. And then when you do try to change, people hold you in that box. And what ends up happening is you feel bad. You get upset, you're frustrated, and you're angry. So then you actually become what other people think you are. So we have to stop putting people in boxes because people are not inherently all good or all bad. They may have a bad day. They may have a hard time. They may be distracted. They may have stuff going on at home. But if we look at someone as being difficult, if we put a label on them as not being easy to get along with, or as being a hardhead, or being an asshole, then we are limiting them from growing. we have said, here's as far as you're going to go, and you're never going to be anything more than that. Imagine if you were told that as a kid. You are only going to be this. Now, you might say, well, they should prove me wrong. They should prove this person wrong. They should want to try. But how many times do you have to hear it before you start to believe it? Before it starts to be ingrained in who you are as a person? So we have to be very careful on the words that we use with other people, because if you're not careful with the words you use with other people, you probably aren't being careful with the words you're using on yourself. If you're judging people that harshly outside of you, how are you judging yourself internally? And I'm saying this from personal experience. I know when I am at my worst, I'm thinking the worst of other people. When I'm not feeling whole, I'm looking for the gaps in other people. I'm looking for their weaknesses. But when I'm feeling great, I don't care. I don't care what's lacking in other people. I let people be. So we have to allow people the space to change. We have to allow people the space to surprise us. We have to allow ourselves the space to process. So think about the labels that you use to describe yourself. If you've always been the smart person, how forgiving are you with yourself? How gentle are you with yourself when you don't have the answer? If you're the organized person and you don't have the process, how good do you feel about yourself? If you're the pretty one, what happens when you get a pimple? If you're the fit one, what happens when you gain a couple pounds or you're slower on your mile? These are all expectations that we have set ourselves up for, and if we're not careful, it can leak into all of our relationships and the way that we think about ourselves. This is where self-awareness and having a growth mindset, if you haven't read The New Psychology of Success, it is great. I highly recommend it, but you have to check yourself first. So if you're coming up with labels of, oh, this person's emotional or this person's a hardhead, you are already setting them up for a fixed mindset. And you're probably creating an environment where that's festering everywhere. But you can start to plant the seeds. And so what I suggested to this person as they were telling me this story about how someone said something that wasn't true about them and made an assumption based on a past label, I said, what if you had just nipped it in the moment? What if you just said, you know what, I'm really curious where that's coming from. I'm curious why you think that of me. Can we have a conversation? Not in a defensive way, not in an arrogant way, but in a curious way. Because here's what's happening. Everyone is deflecting on everyone else. And we're all leaking our energetic garbage all over each other. So if we're not checking it, people aren't aware that they're leaking it. We have to let them know, that's not true, but I wanted to have a conversation to see what might be. I want to seek to understand you in the way that I hope you seek to understand me. But if all we're doing is shooting labels out at each other, we're never in a place to understand one another. We're never in a place to get to a deeper level of seeing the complexities, those multifaceted aspects of each other. You know, what people come in to work with is usually the armored version of themselves. If people are flying off the handle or if they're short and curt, it's usually because they're trying to protect themselves from something. So if we can just take a moment and ask them, what are they trying to protect themselves from? What are they afraid of? We can lead with a little bit more compassion, not to feel sorry for them, not to make excuses for them, but to just give them a little space so that they can be human. And maybe they'll share with you what they're going through. Maybe they will let that wall lower. But it's not up to you to tell them how they're supposed to feel or how they're supposed to act. They're being human. And it's up to you to be human too. No one is perfect. We are all doing the best we can with what we have. And it's about learning from those experiences of being human that allow us to become better for ourselves and for the people around us. So I want you to be very curious about the labels you've been using and what you will use in place of them. Maybe you can talk about the person as an individual, not as a label, not as a generalization or a stereotype. Maybe you can start to see them as an us, as a we, as a human being. And maybe you can start treating yourself the same way. So I hope this was helpful. I hope that you get in touch with those labels and you rip them up and you start to create a new system and a new process of dealing with the people around you and dealing with yourself. It all starts with you. So I hope this was helpful. I hope that it's useful and that you can feel some impact and change. And let me know how it goes. If you're not subscribed, head on over to Apple Podcasts, look up the Spitfire Podcast, tell a friend. Tell a friend or 10. You can also visit spitfirepodcast.com and check out all the past episodes and all the worksheets and all fun stuff that goes along with it. And we're also available on Spotify and I think some other things too. So for all the Spitfires out there, keep being awesome.